Welcome, TEI family, to another episode of The Everyday Investor. Today we have a very special guest with us. This gentleman has overcome adverse situations throughout his life and has continued to invest in himself year after year after year to the point where he currently holds an executive position at a major university. Please help me welcome Ashton Henderson. What's going on, Hendo?
There he is, the man, the myth, the legend, man. It's so good to see you, brother.
How far from it? Hey, it's glad to see you. It's been a long time coming. I know we've been having conversations offline and just kind of telling you how much I'm proud of you in terms of the things that you've been doing and how much I've been kind of following your career path from even the days at Michigan State where we were teammates to I guess the current position. So hey, that's big. Going from I want to get into a little bit of everything that you have been doing over the last 10 plus years from, the days at Michigan State to, going more into like a front office position after those days and, working on a collegiate level as well as the professional level with the Detroit Pistons and even, being an author with the book that you authored back in 2014. But I guess, and that's later down the line. I like to start with like the beginning, growing up in Tallahassee, Florida. How was that growing up from like a family standpoint as well as from like an athletic standpoint?
Yeah, man. Well, first of all, you say all those great things about me, brother, but I'm so proud of you, man.
Appreciate
I have to address you as such, as Esquire, and all those things in which you earned. But I like I told you, and like we talk about offline, it's something really truly special about our Spartan Brotherhood, particularly those we affectionately and graciously lean into what we call Spartan dogs. And you were always the epitome of that, and it's just great to see what life has brought you, and the best is yet to come, good brother. So I'm just been very fortunate watching your LinkedIn humbly, inspiring each other, and just the best is yet to come, man, in a lot of different ways. But for me, growing up in Tallahassee was tremendously amazing. Many people don't really even know that Tallahassee is the capital of Florida. Primarily,
and I know that.
See, it's one of those things that Tallahassee is a blue collar city, an all-American city, a place where those who dream big and have aspirations of doing some really amazing things do.
Okay.
Tallahassee is a huge entrepreneurial, business, savvy, athletic community where folks is pretty large. I would say it's roughly over 200K, folks who live there, if not more, and growing, probably upwards to 300 now.
Wow.
And more. Tallahassee is a very special place, a community of folks that I miss dearly. I know I'm going to throw another thing out here for you all, for my viewers and people who don't know this, but Tallahassee not only is the capital of Florida, but also T-Pain is from Tallahassee.
Okay. I think I did know that one.
Okay. I just want to make sure you all know kind of what the water that's down there, what talent comes out of Tallahassee. But on a serious basis, though, I was very fortunate. Both of my parents worked and sacrificed a lot for me and my older brother to have the experiences and opportunities that we have now. You really don't realize that, but one of the main things that, I complained about, but it's a big part of me and who I am, was my mom, made sure that we always, not sometimes, not this time, always had us somewhere in a church, in some community forum or something. And I think about that now where I am now, and it's a lot of things I've learned from just learning how to interact with a diverse amount of group of people. Just putting myself in different organizations, learning how to lead, learning to watch great leaders lead, and just really centering myself in my foundation, which is my faith, and everything that I have is because of that. And, I'm no stranger, and, I'll be the first to tell you that all the things that I've accomplished would not be without our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. And that started from an early onset with what my parents particularly instilled in me. And it's hard when your mom's a Sunday school teacher where you're not going to miss Sunday school.
And that's tough right there. That's tough. So I would imagine you even went to have to go to the Bible study, Wednesday night Bible study and all that then.
I was at choir rehearsal. I was at Bible study, doing my homework. I was at different places, but that foundation and that when those tough times as you alluded to, when that adversity hit, I was prepared for it because I knew there was always something greater on the other side. But that was really my upbringing. I went to my older brother. We're 6 years apart. Definitely vastly different. You know, I'm more reserved. He is
Okay,
very boisterous,
got you.
the life of the party, great dude. But for me, you know, I've always worked. You know, he was more on the music piece. That was his thing,
Okay,
and marketing and advertising. You know, for me, I was always drawn to that. But morally, sports was for me in terms of
got you.
playing early youth sports, going through those opportunities. Then, you know, just moving on to realize that, oh wow, there's a talent here. Like I have something special that I need to continue to use this God given ability to see where it takes me. And I
At
went
what
to,
at what point was that you know you saw something was different in terms of like the athletic side, your God given abilities on a football field, or just in any sport?
yeah, I would say early, man. My dad would always register us for sports and put us in a league where we were. So I was 5 playing with 7-year olds,
Really?
and he would do that intentionally to kind of gauge where I was and
Yep.
you know what happened. And I think the day I realized and he realized it when I started kind of I was there, but I started running circles around some of the guys who were a lot older than me, and
Wow. Okay. Got you.
he was like, "Hey, you might, you know, it might be something we need to explore a little bit more." And I'm glad I did. And sport, I'm a huge competitor. You know, I love to compete. I'll compete in anything that I do, and that's something where he realized that early. And me and my brother would compete in the house, and it doesn't matter what it was. If it was, you know, shooting, uh, literally, you know, paper planes in the garbage can,
Yeah.
or
Oh yeah.
you
No.
know, different
No. No.
things.
It's for real competing.
Oh, just anything we could do. So he taught me how to take that into turning me from a hot-headed young man into someone who I am today, where I know how to work with teammates and be a better leader because I always wanted to win.
Yep.
So much so where it would be, I'll never forget, I was probably middle school. I shot the game winning shot and I missed it. And this was for pretty much us to move on to the district. It was one of those games, but I remember I caught the biggest temper tantrum, man. I was just out of sync, out of whack. And
Wow.
many people wouldn't know that, but he would tell you like that was a moment where it was a teachable moment
Yep.
to show like you're competitive. It's okay to be a competitor, but you also have to do it with class.
Right. Oh, that's true.
And he taught me that, and that's something where that moment I learned how to win and lose with class, and that's something that translate to life. You know how you really communicate and present yourself to people is important.
No, yeah, for sure. And I think, I guess as we get off into it, it's a lot of like life principles in sports that I picked up, and I'm sure it seems like you picked up as well. That I think, seems like a lot of people maybe don't understand or appreciate as much. But that's one of the things because at some point in sports and as well as life, you're going to lose, and it's that how do you, know? Are you a hothead when you lose, or lose gracefully? Like that means something. To the competitors, to the fans, that means something. So yeah, just being able to have that skill or learn that early on, it seemed to be important. So at what point did you like from a okay, I can play football in college standpoint? Because coming out of high school, you were one of the top cornerbacks in the country. And I know I was talking to TJ Duckett like 3 days ago, and he was saying that in his first recruiting letter was to Wisconsin in the 8th grade back in the day. So at what point for yourself from like did you have that introduction like okay I can play at the next level?
Yeah, I'll never forget that. It was something. Snail mail was a thing for those of you now, particularly in the recruiting cycle and how things are done. But I'll never forget probably one of my first letters that I got probably around that same time.
Wow.
You know, 8th grade, of just recruiters writing and having the ability to say, "Hey, we're watching you."
Gotcha.
And that was something where I was like, "Man, could really be a reality for me." And I really started to really take intentional steps
Yep.
with really being serious about, you know, governing my body as a temple.
Yep.
What I mean by that was who was I around? What was I doing? What was I exposing myself to? And really knowing that what I had to lose was a lot more, out there than those, folks who didn't have the opportunities that I had. So I think it was just surreal, man. And that happened probably around that same time where,
Wow.
I still kept my grandfather. He's a craftsman. He passed away probably about 3 or 4 years ago.
Okay.
And what he did for me, and it was pretty cool, and it lives in my parents' house, is every letter that I received from college
Really?
turned it into a huge scrapbook.
Well,
So
that's pretty cool.
I could showcase and share that with my children one day,
Yeah.
where they may look at me in present day and be like, nah, I don't believe
Yeah,
this.
you on God, you ain't never had it.
I could show them the Carfax and be like, this right here. And it was a very special moment. He presented that to me on signing day, and it's in this huge oak. He built it from.
Oh, yeah, man, that's if you said it was an oak, yeah, that's man, he was serious about it.
He crafted.
Yeah,
And it was incredible, and it's something that I'll always have and cherish. Those memories of every schools from every coast.
right.
And it was just to me that was probably one of the most sentimental yet heartfelt gifts I've ever received.
I bet. So again, being in Tallahassee, how did you come to the conclusion of Michigan State? Because again, growing up for me, watching Miami, watching Florida State, at least in my time, they were like that was a team to beat. Now you got the Alabamas, and at one period it was USC who had their run. But back when I was coming up, Miami's the Florida States. They were like Florida's even maybe I'll throw that team in there. They were like the cream of the crop. So how did you be able to make it out of Florida and come up to the Midwest to Michigan State?
Yeah, honestly, Brother Spears, I'm glad things happened the way they did, but I never envisioned myself being a Midwesterner or coming to Michigan State. That was never in my future or my plan. But I'm so glad I did. But given what you said, you were immensely right. You had the big three where I'm from. You also at that time, UCF, USF.
Yep.
Those schools were on the rise and doing some really great things. But I think for me, I always made it clear, through the recruitment process to a lot of people, folks who recruited me that I knew I was going to leave Florida. I made that very clear.
Oh, really?
Coming out, because I was looking for more of a different experience, something that I hadn't experienced in life before.
Yep.
I wanted to see what else was out there.
Gotcha.
And that exposed me, which led me to finding some amazing schools that were my top schools that I ended up choosing. And I'm so glad that I did that. And clearly I made the right choice because it brought me back here 14 years later.
Right. No, that's cool. So coming into Michigan State, how was like that again? Because you're in Florida, so I mean you're in the warm weather in Florida, so you're not dealing with a cold or snow or anything like that. I remember back with the Capital One Bowl we had, and I think we went to Orlando, Florida. We played Georgia, and that was my first time like on Christmas, and it was like no snow, like 80 degrees, and I'm like, what? This is crazy. So it seemed like for you, it had to be the opposite of the opposite scenario where you're going from a place that really doesn't get cold, no snow, and now you're coming into the Midwest where you have to deal with the excruciating winters and the snow and all that stuff. So I guess how was that freshman year? How was that adjustment?
Ooh, man, I still get weather PTSD about it.
That you and I both.
I have, you know how it goes. I'm a Michigander now, man, so I understand it better. I have a Michigan license to prove it, but man, it was 45 yesterday, sunny. This morning is 20.
Oh,
and sun, gust, wind, no dusting, straight snow on the ground. Like it's here. But I think for me, it was a tough adjustment because coming in here, it was about 7, 8 of us who signed from Florida.
Okay.
So, many of us were under the impression that when it snowed, the sun was still out, all these things were going to happen to us that we saw on our visit, which was intentionally, strategically managed when we came.
Yeah.
So, how we came, when we came, how we entered, all those different things. So, boy, were we ever in for a rude awakening when we really got some snow and the cattle became our best friend.
The cattle will save you, especially in the wintertime. Sure. But then from on the field, how was that adjustment? Because again, you came in under John Neal, which again we'll get off into later. I think after your what was it? Did you play 1 or 2 years with them, and then it was a coaching change, or was it just 1 year with Coach Smith?
Yeah, I played 1 year with Coach John Neal and his staff, and I'm grateful for Coach John Neal for giving me an opportunity to have a scholarship.
Right.
And always will be forever indebted to him for that.
No, so this is, I guess, I see one of the adverse moments because I was looking up some stuff as I was doing my research, and your freshman year, you had 4 starts, so it wasn't like you were just playing special teams or just in the background. You were actually playing to the point where you started versus I think Notre Dame, Michigan. You started or I'm not sure if this was your sophomore year or your freshman year, but you were starting, and then it was a coaching change, and now it was it was a different ball game. So I guess you talk about a little bit about that from like an adversity standpoint, and then what was going through your head as you were kind of going through that process.
Yeah, I think, my freshman year, I was supposed to redshirt. That
Okay.
was something where, unfortunately, probably about a couple weeks before camp had started, one of the corners ahead of me had pretty much a unbelievable. I mean, it was just a horrible injury going into
Oh,
the year.
gotcha.
So what ended up happening is I had to grow up quickly, and I started to really get invested in playing as a freshman early on special teams. Then got into some of our nickel packages, dime packages.
Okay.
Really learned. Then next year, when we had the coaching change,
Oh, yep. Yeah. Okay. That's
was when I was able to prove myself and really get comfortable and understand the system. And an opportunity opened up for me, um, and I didn't look back. And there was an opportunity where I actually started in some really marquee games for our program. The Michigan game, Notre Dame, various aspects of when you look at it. Started against Boston College in our bowl game,
whole game. Yep.
and some other really key critical starts against Iowa. I was actually named defense attack force player of the week
Wow.
against Iowa. And then, I would say my next year is kind of when adversity kind of struck, was when I got pretty much with my knee, or
Ouch.
my knee, and really couldn't ever bounce back from how I was normally moving around. And, obviously as a defensive back, swift hips,
Yeah.
good knees matter.
Yeah. That's big. Yeah. No, you're right about that. So then, I guess mentally, how were you dealing with that? Did you ever thought like, okay, just give me some time, I'm gonna get back, or did you know at that point like it's going? I don't think I'll be able to get back to that, pre-injury form.
Yeah, I think, there were times where I would say, mental health is such a huge thing right now and always will be and should be for the duration of life. I think there were probably times where I didn't even realize that I was anxious or depressed or had no clue.
Really?
I was just trying to just battle through it
Yeah.
in terms of what that could look like and trying to be strong. But there were times where I really didn't know, what was going to happen.
Okay.
And I'm a very upbeat, optimistic. I told you who I am is rooted in faith,
Right.
and that comes with that. However, I will say there were times where it was like, man, what will this look like for me if the doors close?
Right.
And that's why I'm in the work that I'm in now, to really help student athletes see
Okay.
so much more for them than just what we have to showcase as student athletes on the field, courts, tracks,
Yeah.
all the areas in which we compete.
Yeah.
But there's a shelf life on this, and you have to be ready to compete in life. And if you take those same transferable skills that we learned from coaching,
Yeah.
and all those areas of focus and ability to really lean into what is your gifts,
Yeah.
man, it's an unbelievable experience when you find that out and you
Okay.
apply those pieces. And that's why I do what I do, so that I can be a better sounding board and help student athletes get through these tough times where you can't see an end. Because you couldn't tell me after my sophomore year I wasn't going.
To the NFL.
I was going, and I was ready. You start to see all the where you fall in these
Right.
charts and
Yep.
how many. Then you really, there's only so many slots, man.
Yep.
In that room, you're in the chair. You're like, I want those slots.
Yeah. You're right. You're right.
So, but it is helping in a lot of different ways to mask that. But
So, and it's interesting because again, like you said, your sophomore year, I would say more or less a breakout year at that point. So going into your junior year, second year, the coaching change, and kind of you have the injury, but you're not playing as much as you would like. You never thought about, especially you have to think about these days where you have the transfer portal and people are switching schools left and right, and it's almost like Russian roulette out here. That thought never crossed your mind. I know, looking back hindsight, you're glad that you stayed because it definitely worked out for you. But at that point in time, especially like I said, having aspirations of going to the NFL and all those things, it never crossed your mind. I'm like, man, let me go play somewhere else where I know I'm gonna be the man and potentially have an opportunity yet. I'm sure a dream of mine, which is to make it to the NFL.
yeah, I think for me was, when I made a decision to come to Michigan State, it was, and not, and that's something that, as you alluded to, Travis Key, myself, and Caleb Thornhill, all former teammates of ours, we all, when we wrote the book Beyond the Gridiron, it was that simple reason to not one of the principles and guiding principles we speak to eloquently is you can't choose a school, or we're advising student athletes, don't choose a school by a coach. Schools choose the school based on what is it going to do for you for the next 10 to 15, 20 years of your lifetime. So my choice was to Michigan State was because I fell in love with the university, and I knew exactly what it represented, and I knew what it meant to break the color barrier years ago.
Yep.
And I was fascinated by that because I love history.
Yep.
And
Okay.
being a part of an institution that gave African Americans one of the first opportunities to play football on this level and compete was a story that when I was told about and I started reading about it, I was like, I want to be a part of this. And also, I just fell in love with the campus. So it wasn't about me ever leaving. It was about how can I figure out how to make the best of what I have here. And
Got you.
I always never was going to have an opportunity to, my parents weren't going to let me quit, even if I wanted to quit. And that was something where I'm very thankful for. And that's the grit, the tenacity, all those things that you learn through those years.
For sure. And man, you almost have to appreciate your parents looking back on it, because again, these days, man, it seems like the parents they'd be at the neck of the coaches more so than the athletes as far as, my kid is not playing and we need to go somewhere else so that he can get an opportunity because this coach is holding him or her back. So it seems like your parents having that that approach of, hey, you're not going to quit, you're going to start what you finish. That, man, that's, in these days, it seems like that's a rarity.
Yeah, it's a different age, man. It's a different time, and we have to be flexible and be nimble with that.
Right.
And also too, it comes from what the culture you were around.
Yep.
And I'm a big on that. One of the things that I portray and project is a 3C model for me in anything I do. The 3Cs for me is culture. What does your culture look like? How we communicate is another C, and another C that I always talk about is connectivity. So I found those 3Cs, regardless of, I may have hit a bump or two in my playing, but Coach D'Antonio did a phenomenal job of what I've grown to know of how to really cultivate those 3Cs that I really lean into, so much so that him and I, his wife, we keep in contact to this day.
Nice.
And he's just been a great mentor, and someone who I lean on heavily and is rooting for me to be an athletic director one of these days.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's something where there's nothing like a coach player relationship, especially when it's done where someone really cares about you. And those are tough decisions when there are people who are outperforming you, or you just can't get back to the level you want to. That's life. And you got to realize, what can you take from those experiences and apply them to be better in different areas where you can outwork and out hustle and do things that can get you exactly where you want to be, but do it with integrity and doing it the right way. Those things that win all the time.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree with that. So I do have one more question before leaving, like graduating college. You said, early on in the interview that you always had a thing for advertising. And I knew early on that as I came to Michigan State, that, man, it was a different level of talent between even like collegiate talent and talent who was going to eventually play at the next level. My freshman year was, Devon Ringer. Senior year, played with Le'Veon Bell. So you're playing with some top tier running backs. Well, got a chance to play with some top tier running backs. So that, along with some good mentorship, helped me major in mechanical engineering, where I know I had a good fallback position once my playing days were over with. And I always knew I wanted to go to law school. So that all kind of worked out for me pretty seamless. For you, from an advertising standpoint, we talk a lot about the STEM fields and things like that. Was it like a no-brainer that you were going to major in advertisement, or was it some other majors that you contemplated, during your time at Michigan State that you wanted to maybe go into?
Yeah, at that time, in that moment in time, I thought one of the things that I was going to do, and the reason why I strategically chose advertising, was I thought I was going to own my own sports PR firm.
Got you.
So that was something that I was very passionate about, something I wanted to do. Then I realized very quickly that I wanted to work in athletics.
Yeah.
And I didn't know how, I didn't know when. I just knew this was a path for me based on what I saw. And I love sports. I love being around it. It doesn't matter what it is, from rowing, tennis, football, basketball. I love learning about different sports and how we all intertwine. So it didn't take me long to realize that obviously how you use that in from my degree and what those aspects look like are huge components to what I leverage now as it relates to, you have to brand, you have to market yourself in anything and everything you do. So I'm still leveraging those skills in a variety of different ways, but that shifted for me. And many folks don't know this, but there's statistics and there's research that showcase now, like our parents of that generation, like my grandfather,
Yep.
well, I told you about, they were staying at GM for 40, 50 years.
Oh, that was easy, and they were making good money.
Good money, had good pensions, had
Yep.
good plans. That's what you did.
Yep.
Now, with our generation, you're going to change jobs 7 times
Yep.
in your lifetime. That's just the minimum. So that's not even where you're going to do what you're counting. So not saying that we're promoting that, but that's just a sense of curiosity that we have now, and the autonomy we had and afforded those opportunities where they didn't have the same access and equity that we have to go do what we want to do, and
Gotcha.
and no one's stopping you. You knew that. So it was something that I found very fascinating in how those comparisons lie.
Oh, okay. All right. That's good. Actually, that's really good. Like you said, back in the day, it was you're going to work this one job and you're going to ride this one out. But hey, these days, you're I want to say jumping, but I don't think that's the right word, because it's just kind of what it is these days. Curiosity, like you mentioned, that's just a part of the game, and I think we should understand that going in. I know you work a lot with athletes, obviously, in your current position. So I guess this is a question that just maybe I thought of. How would you recommend athletes to kind of pick their major? And the reason I said that, because a gentleman who I played with at Michigan State, he went on to play a little bit in the NFL. He was telling me, we was having a phone conversation, and he was telling me that he wanted to do engineering, but he was almost persuaded against it, just because he was coming in a football player, and they were like, man, that's going to be too, I don't want to say tough, but too demanding. And obviously we know Ross Weaver, who he did it also, a mechanical engineering as well. And I remember those days. I was like a freshman when he was coming to class late because he had classes that were around the football schedule. And I think that some degrees just don't coexist well with athletics, especially particularly football. So I guess, how do you kind of go about, as you're mentoring and kind of advising students on their major? And do you say, I'm pretty sure it's not a one thing catch all, where you say, hey, go into STEM. But I guess, what factors are you telling the student to think about as they're making such an important decision?
Yeah, that's a good question, man. I think we put a lot of merit, and we put a lot of stock in trying to figure out what your major is and what is that going to be. This is a great decision for individuals who are 18 to 22 years old, who are still, our brains are still being formed.
Right.
So in terms of what we know, that amygdala and the fight or flight and all those modes, and trying to understand that scientific base, where we're asking this individual to decide for the rest of your life, what are you going to do?
At 18 years old, 19.
Is that a fair thing to do? And I think we have to be, as administrators, and have a little bit more latitude and flexibility as it relates to what is actually available to students. And that's, from my background of being an academic advisor, one of the things that, I would focus on and ensure that our students had, when I was at Florida State and when I was at Clemson, was ensuring that those individuals really took care of their general studies and had a good base of where they could dictate where their majors are.
Got you.
What you're seeing now is, when we were playing, Dave, is we were inhibited by what time practice was,
Right.
Different things. Mainly now, not only here at State, but just across the country, many teams are practicing in the mornings, which I would have loved that, dude.
Really? You're talking about actual football practice in the morning?
Absolutely, man.
Wow, I did not know that.
Multitude of different places, not just here, but across the country, with different statistics, as well as different findings and return to play and injury when they happen. Typically happen when you're fatigued, when the sun's beating you off, different. So we're making more scientific, evidence-based, more leaning, decisions. So that would inhibit us from, wanting to explore a major that, not saying we wouldn't do it, we always found a way. But now there's no barrier as to, in terms of timing of majors. There's a secret. There's more online offerings. There's so many ways you can get there now, which I'm very, very fortunate how it has evolved.
Yep.
So there's no barriers to what you can major in. But I do think you have to be realistic too. Now, granted, if you're not someone who's strong in math and science,
Yep.
I'm not about to tell you to be a mechanical engineer
Yeah,
because
for
that's
sure.
not your ministry.
Yep. And that's important you said that because my cousin told me since you are strong in math or you like math and science, do engineering. So that was the exact advice I got from my mentor as I was coming in.
Smart goals are real, man. Specific, measurable,
Yep.
attainable, realistic. All those things that you have to have that mindset.
Yeah.
And that's like me. You put me in on goal line to run it in. I'll probably get in there, Dave,
Yep.
with the right appropriate pulls and things of that nature. But you are going to know exactly A, B, C. The gaps to hit
Yep.
because that's your natural
Gotcha.
where you feel comfortable.
That's good.
Whereas if someone else who's heavy arts and sciences, and I want to say this too, a lot of folks, you go with those, the engineering, I want to be a medical doctor, I want to be a physical therapist, I want to be all these things. But if you focus on where your passion is,
Yep.
like if you love history, if you love, teaching, go into that. That's the things where you're going to really find. And there's so many career assessments,
Yep.
things that we leverage and utilize now so that you know exactly what students love to do so you can start
Right.
baking that in. And that's what electives are for too, to help you understand that so you can garner that a plan, which
Yep.
is going to help you.
No, and I like that. And I like that. So then again, you're graduating and like you said, at this point you want to do something within sports. Seems like there's a few different options that a lot of former athletes take, whether they do the coaching or do the front office. Was it always a goal just to be more in the front office type atmosphere as opposed to the coaching? Because again, I think both they have very demanding schedules and both, they require you paying your dues, so to speak, until you get to the point where you can kind of, I don't want to say cash in, but really, athletic director or, an executive position within a school or a program. How did you make that determination, or was it always, hey, I want to be in the front office compared to being on the field coaching?
Yeah, I always told Jesse, you remember Jesse Johnson,
Yep, yep.
our teammates. I said, Jesse, when you become a head coach, man, just call me. I'll recruit Florida for you. That's what I'll do. And I'm still waiting on Jesse to call me. Jesse White Shoes Johnson. He gonna call. But no, seriously, I think for me, there were a period in time where I thought coaching was in my future.
Okay.
But for me, and granted, any job in athletics, particularly as you move up the chain, you have to be very strategic and have an opportunity where work-life integration is mixed in your livelihood and what you do. One of my colleagues, frat brothers, and someone I admire in the space, just did an interview this past week. He's the AD at the University of New Orleans, the Privateers, and he talked about how he infuses that with his staff.
Okay.
In terms of, providing more flexible times for them to come in on Monday or if they've worked a long weekend, or going back to that culture mentality that I was telling you how big it is with culture eats strategy for breakfast. And it's something that you build and people know based on how you treat them, how you show up for them and what you do. So I honestly think for me, I was more invested in having more time with my family.
Okay.
And
I like
being
that.
around and not moving them around, because that's a part of the coaching carousel. You gotta really move around, and if things don't go well with that particular coach who you're on the, you could be gone, in a day or different things. So that was always something to me where it's like I'd rather go an administrator and be the person who's setting the direction and the temperature than the temperature being set for me. So that was something where I really appreciated and being around amazing leaders to formulate that plan.
No, and that makes sense, and I like that for sure in terms of the whole set the temperature as opposed to having to respond to what the temperature is. Cause man, it's the coaching, man. Whether it's on a professional level or collegiate level, or even I guess less on a high school level, but it's tough in terms of being able to uproot your family and jump not only from like city to city, but state to state, and it has to be tough. So no, that makes sense. So then I guess at that point Michigan State gives you your first opportunity, working, post your playing career as a graduate assistant, and then kind of working within the athletic department at Michigan State. How important was that for you to not only be, because again, a lot of people don't get that opportunity at their alma mater. A lot of times they are at a different school. Well, how important was that to be at a familiar place at Michigan State and be around familiar people to, as you were taking that transition from your post playing days?
Yeah, I think it goes back to relationships, right? And, it's so important. A lot of my mentors tell me in 7 seconds, you make 11 impressions on people.
Wow.
And the impressions that I wanted to leave, not only as a student athlete, I just want to be known as somebody who was a good teammate, who had good character.
Yep.
Was I perfect? No. But I wanted to always know that people could always count on me and be dependable.
Like
And that was something where even when my playing days were over, and that's something that I'm very passionate about, the people who helped shape and build me to the man I am today were all engineered here at Michigan State.
Yep.
There's a lot of people, and I won't get into naming names, but I have to name one of these names because without that individual, I wouldn't even be here where I am. That individual is Jim Pignataro.
Okay.
And Jim was the executive director of SAS at that juncture. And I remember after playing, trying to figure out what was next, talk about crisis mode of like, what am I going to do?
Right.
I've been playing football since I was 5. I don't know what's next for me. And, one of the things he said to me was, hey, I have an opportunity here. And that's because I built a rapport with him over the years.
Right.
I always would stop in. I would always say hello. I would ask him how his family was doing.
Yep.
I would say, hey, what are you working on? Like, what is something, just things that would spark an interest because I knew I wanted to be in athletics. But
Yep.
that led to when he saw a door was closing for me, he was like, hey, I would love to have someone of your caliber on my team.
Like that.
And what that did for me is open a door, which I didn't understand the door was opening for me at that time, but he did. And one of the ways I'll tell you that is because when I was a GA, he was the president of our national association. So he, which was a big, big deal. And I didn't understand how big a deal it was until now. And N4A has been the bedrock of who I am as an individual.
Yep.
And N4A, for those who are familiar, stands for the National Association for Academic and Student Athlete Development Professionals. Say that 10 times fast, 15 if you're feeling good on a good day. But with that, one day he told me, he was like, Ashton, you were going to be the N4A president one day. And I looked at him, I'm like, dude, are you, what are you thinking? And he was so serious. And fast forward, 2021, before he passed away, or something, the moment that I always will cherish is that he got to witness me being sworn in via Zoom as N4A president.
Nice.
And I say that is because it all started at Michigan State.
Right.
The founding father of our association, who was also one of my dear, dear mentors and strong friends, Dr. Clarence Underwood, who was the second African-American athletic director here at Michigan State, started N4A in 1975.
Wow.
So during my presidency, I was able to honor him, a Michigan State alum, as well as Jim Jim passed away through Hodgkin's lymphoma, battling that cancer. We ended up, our association forever, from the end of our time to the main of our existence, we have named our awards luncheon after him. So it's now the Jim Pignataro Awards Luncheon. But all of those things happen because I came here, because he saw me. And I think it's important, and that's why I encourage a lot of student athletes to do currently. Don't wait, start when you get on campus and start building these authentic relationships, because you never know who's watching.
Right. No, and again, I had told you that story offline in terms of how I, just forming a relationship 7+ years ago, led to a big opportunity for me. And I always say your network is your net worth. Those relationships that you cultivate, you never know. And again, I'm not just saying that you're looking to try to maybe come up off a person, but that's, you're providing value, they're providing value. You guys are watering each other over time. And I think those are, I just can't say enough about, how that, like those type of relationships and how they work out for the better in the end. So that's cool that you're definitely, having the same sentiment as far as that goes. So then I guess you were at Michigan State for a time period, and then you spent some time going back to Florida for a little bit at Florida State, and then going to Clemson. So I guess, and I know you had 2 stints at Florida State, but I guess in a totality, what did those 2 opportunities or opportunities, what did that provide you with as you moved on? Which I want to talk about. Going to the Detroit Pistons, which is it seems like a different ball game being on the professional ranks as opposed to the collegiate ranks. So what did those stops at Florida State and Clemson, I guess, teach you while you were there?
Yeah, it goes back to, again, you'll hear me sound like a broken record, 8-track, a vinyl, however you want to call it, quote, but relationships matter. And
Okay.
the reason I have both of those opportunities, particularly the first time, I worked at Florida State twice, but the first stint when I left Michigan State as a graduate assistant under Jim,
Yep.
my mentor and someone I lean on currently to this day, Steve Buzan, hired me at Florida State, to work as an academic advisor
Okay.
for football and track and field and cross country. From there, Steve ended up leaving Florida State for an unbelievable opportunity to go to Clemson.
Okay.
And once he got settled, he asked me to come with him.
Wow.
So it was really awesome that those two experiences were really become, being under his tutelage. And that just speaks to Steve as a leader and what I saw in him. But in those instances, I learned so much about me. I learned how to be, meticulous in anything that I did when it came to monitoring eligibility and helping student athletes find their why and be successful. At Clemson, my game was elevated as I was given more responsibility
Nice.
in terms of how I, continue to navigate the field of intercollegiate athletics. And that's when I really found myself as a professional. As I was really moving into some awards. Actually, Steve nominated me for the Professional Promise Award that our association receives. And granted, I was very fortunate to obtain that. And that's what kind of the momentum began. And I then went back to Florida State,
Okay.
take on a larger role for 6 years, and then expanded into athletic administration and source supervision to monitoring budgets and doing the unthinkable. So,
Yeah.
but all of that started from what I learned in academic support.
Yep.
And how to leverage and navigate relationships and work with people, which is so critical in this day and age, and really understand how to motivate people and inspire people, because that's a huge thing. It's easy for me to wake up and be fired up and be ready to go.
Yeah, for sure.
How do I translate that to the job of getting other people to have that same positivity, energy, emotion, will to win, grit, all of those things, where that's me as a leader, that my job now impacts not what I do, but what people do around me.
Gotcha.
That's a change. That's a shift. But I've learned all of that because I can relate, because I've been in those situations and I've been in the trenches and the weeds. But Florida State, Clemson, unbelievable stops, amazing people on everything. Stan Wilcox, who is the executive vice president
Yep.
at the NCAA for regulatory affairs. One of my mentors, Dr. Spetman, Randy Spetman, first 80. I go on and on and on.
No, and that's good. And I guess one of the things I do want to plug your book, because you did, like talked about earlier, co-authored the book Beyond the Gridiron. So I guess, can you talk a little bit about that? And I'm assuming, I know you were talking about the 3 C's earlier. I would imagine that that's in the book. Maybe but I guess, how did you come to that point to say, hey man, I need to write a book? Because it seems like as we're talking and as I was kind of doing my research, a big theme is helping out the students, helping them make that successful transition from their playing days to what's next in life, and how to make that as seamless as possible. So I guess what came into, okay, we're going to write a book to help out with that, in addition to the things that we're doing on a day-to-day basis within our actually our careers at the different schools we were doing.
Yeah, I think, our book is rooted in vulnerability. Our book was rooted in just trying to really make the experience more amenable and more, I would say, I had an unbelievable experience here at Michigan State, and I made a lot of mistakes while I was here too. And I wanted to make sure the next generation of athletes, not just in Michigan State, but the world, who had this opportunity to seize it, to know how much power you have as a student athlete to shape your experience and really look at your portfolio and what you need to be learning and what you need to expose yourself to. So that was what that was all about, was really trying to get them to understand how to maximize every resource you have on campus. And that was something where we knew would be a huge, receptivity of it would be great, because, we were very fortunate, because like I said, we were very structured, very studious, made the right decisions, but you're 1 millisecond away from changing the trajectory of your future, good, bad,
Absolutely.
and different. So that was why we put that out there, because it was really about the mistakes we made
Yep.
in college, but also helping those not only for football but all sports, just
Yep.
applicable to every sport
Yep.
and how it can help you. So it was an unbelievable project. Glad we were able to do a second edition of it a couple years ago. And once you're an author, it always speaks to you. So there are things that potentially could be coming down the pipe, that hopefully in your world, we can't speak to at this
Yeah.
juncture.
Yeah.
But hopefully we keep living and we'll see.
No, definitely, definitely, and I'm gonna definitely plug that the book in the description when this comes out. I definitely want to plug that as much as possible, and I mean I'm sure it's a great read, in that like you said, whether you're playing football or any other sport on any other level, seems like it may be more so created for the collegiate, but seems like, or whether you are incoming or at Michigan or at just your college or university, it seems like you can get something out of it. So now I'll definitely plug that and hope the viewers pick up that. So again, and I know we're kind of running out of time here, and I want to be respectful of your time that you have given me today. It is two things I want to leave with. The first is going from, okay, you're dealing primarily with the collegiate athletics at this point, and then what made you say, okay, we're going to try something at uh, the Detroit Pistons in the NBA in a professional arena? I guess, what was that decision, and how was your time at the Detroit Pistons? Because from what I understand, this was the DEI, the director of DEI at the Detroit Pistons. You were the first person to hold that position, so that's big. So can you talk a little bit about that and kind of how that all came about?
Yeah, again, man, I'll sound like a broken 8-track record. All these things
Relationships.
folks don't know about how a CD skips. We got all these different apparatuses and apps now where you
Yeah.
stream music. But I'm so fortunate. While we were here, our athletic director, Mark Hollis, he was a huge mentor, still is to this day to me. And Mark, um, is pseudo, I call him this, he's the mayor of Detroit. He just knows, he's so well respected, relational. He just has all the intangibles, the acumen. So one of the reasons I intentionally left college athletics was because I was on a relentless pursuit to be an athletic director. And I had to really stop myself and understand that I'm not running anyone else's race. I'm running Ashton's race.
Okay.
And once you stop and I stopped comparing myself to individuals who were getting athletic director jobs in a much younger age than I was,
Yeah. Okay, I got you.
I didn't have to do that. But this step at the Pistons was so critical for me because, it taught me so much. It taught me one of the missing links in the chain that I didn't have. I couldn't get a first down, or the chains would never stretch because I didn't stretch this part of my brain, and that part was externally. So for me, going to the Pistons was a very strategic yet an intentional step that I had the opportunity to learn, how corporate partnerships work, how to drive revenue, how to create opportunities and work with C-suite level individuals and translate that into, i.e., relational, capital that I'm in now.
Yeah.
So I learned all of that, and I'm so grateful. I had probably one of the best champions, outside of, and, we're in the middle of March, although we celebrate Women's Empowerment Month outside of March.
Yeah.
And 2 times over,
Right.
International Women's Day is on Wednesday. But there are so many women in my life that are in leadership roles who've empowered and impacted me in ways that have just been instrumental. So one of those was at the Pistons, who our chief people officer now, Nicolette Lewis. I learned so much from her. And one of the things I learned is how you really take ownership and treat your people, and how to establish a culture that's unbelievable.
Gotcha.
And one of the things that she taught me, I apply every single day. In fact, today was one of my colleagues' birthday, one of my direct reports, and there's a list of all the things that they like. This individual likes color, dessert, you name it, coffee, so
Yeah.
I knew today when her birthday was, and I knew I was coming with a cinnamon toast crunch cheesecake. Why did I do that? I did that to not only show that she's seen,
Yeah,
but also it's her special day. But like how you treat people when you go, the little things matter.
that's big.
And like what we go through in sport, the game
Yep,
of inches.
yep,
It's a game of inches.
yep.
And that little small gesture from me to her meant a lot, that I even remember it, and I didn't get her random something that she doesn't even care for, or it was like a last minute afterthought.
Yep,
But she matters to me. She matters to our organization.
that's
But
big.
she matters to our enterprise. Without that individual, I can't do or provide a level of service. So those are just little small tidbits that help me establish that one of those 3 C's of culture and why they're so important.
No, and that's nice. That's nice. And yeah, I mean, I think that's big in terms of like getting out of your comfort zone to just try to become a more well-rounded individual within like the professional ranks, or seems like that's, man, I think that's a something that people don't understand as much. Like you said, they get kind of focused or zoned in terms of what they're trying to do, that they don't kind of think about, hey, I don't want to say think outside the box, but let's do something different, switch it up in a very necessary but meaningful way, so that it's going to help out and it's going to make sense at the end of the day. So that, man, that's pretty cool. So then, how was it getting that call from Michigan State to say, hey, we want you to come back as an associate athletic director? How was that? Because that seemed like that, which is your current role, but that seemed like that would have been a pretty uh, happy day, pretty exciting moment in your career to get that call to come back to your alma mater, continue to serve in the next phase of the next stage of what it is that you're doing, athletes and in the front office.
Yeah, probably, one of the things you always hear is, the 2 most important days you find out in your life is when you were born, and then when you found out why.
Right.
And
Okay.
this has always been my why, and always something that I've always dreamt about doing. And when I got the call and the opportunity, I'm so blessed and fortunate to work for someone who was also a Spartan through and through, and a Spartan dog, and has been an incredible person, advocate, leader for me, Alan Haller. So when I got that call, it was unbelievable. But knowing that I was prepared for the call too,
And that's big.
that was something. It's a difference when you get a call and you're not ready for it.
Right.
I was expecting this call.
Okay.
And I was
That's nice.
preparing myself for getting this call that I dreamed about one day. And I know when he called, I'd be ready. So he put me in. So talk about a surreal, I remember my fiance, who is the ultimate, person who gets and has an athletic background. She played basketball at Ball State and also worked in athletics for a number of years. So she gets it. So I remember her playing on repeat, I'm Coming Home by P. Diddy. And
Nice.
it was just an awesome, awesome ode. And they threw me a surprise party. Here being a year in, I started as an executive associate AD, and now recently in January being promoted to deputy athletics director for championship resources. So, it's within my reach, just taking it day by day, which we would equate to play by play,
Right. Yep.
minute by minute, moment by moment, being where my feet are. But my reality is becoming true that one day I will be an athletic director,
Yeah, for sure.
or a conference commissioner, and it's something that I'm starting to really see, but not only for me, but that's my calling. That's what I've been brought here to do, and I feel it every day.
That's that purpose. And hey, look, I have no doubt that that time is coming. You've definitely put in the work over the years. I know you were saying early on about kind of following me and what I had going on, but I've been kind of following you every step of the way. Again, going from the Michigan State to Florida State to Clemson, back to Florida State to Detroit. I was happy to see that you were coming back to the Midwest when you got the position with the Pistons, and hey, look, I smile like I was promoted to associate athletic director at Michigan State when I saw that you were coming back to Michigan State to assume that position. So that's cool, and man, I think that pretty much kind of wraps up what it is that I want. I guess I do have something to say or ask you, and again, you could just kind of just whether you want to answer it or not. Obviously you played at Michigan State. Football was your alma mater. Graduated from Michigan State. Currently serving in your current role there at Michigan State. went to undergrad at Michigan State. I went to law school at Michigan State. Played there. So we are, that community is near to dear to both of us. I actually have a cousin who stayed, who's a junior at Michigan State that I communicate with. Can you kind of give us an idea of like just kind of based on the recent events, like that the sense of normalcy that we're all trying to get back to, whether you, especially being on campus, being a student, being an employee of that university, but just the whole Spartan community, the sense of, I guess, the mood or the like of campus, as we all try to get get back to some sense of normalcy after the recent events.
Yeah, I think just going back there is that was a tough time for all. Anybody who, like you said, represents the Spartan, and what we all love is near and dear. And I think, it's just really tough time. And, I think it will never be something we'll ever kind of forget.
Yeah.
It'll always be a part of, who we are, our DNA and those aspects. But one of the things about Spartan is so incredibly just how resilient this community is and how we support and lift each other up through tough times. And that's something what, Spartan's all about. And if we hadn't leaned into Coach Izzo's comments or what he made at the visual for those 3 lives that were taken from us so soon and senselessly, and also those who are still fighting for their lives.
Right.
It sums up everything we represent, not only as an athletic department, but just as Spartans.
Yeah, for sure.
And, I want to take this time too to give one of our teammates a huge shout out. Otis Wiley, he's one of my best friends, brothers, someone who I expect, look up to and admire. And one of the things that he did was really worked in conjunction with campus and created, an event Sunday, probably the week after everything had happened.
Oh, wow.
And what it was, Meyer, all these corporate partners came together to welcome students back to campus to let them know that this was a safe space. When I tell you, it was probably about 15,000 people
Really?
flowing through Red Cedar like it was a football game day.
Wow.
And that to me was a moment where the healing started for most of us.
Yep.
We all grieve and process things differently.
Yep.
So I never want to put anyone on their box, but that moment was impactful to see our community, to see the students, to see faculty, everyone come together to welcome those folks back.
Yeah.
Was just, it gave me chills. And he would never take credit for it.
Yep.
But that was something that he curated along with some student leaders on campus. And this all happened in like 72 hours.
Wow.
It was something that was, we had talked about it, but when it grew exponentially.
Wow, that's cool.
The Spartan Dog was at the forefront of it.
Yeah.
And someone who represents and loves this university immensely. And that's what being a Spartan is all about.
Yeah.
That's something that we're always going to do. And, prayers and continued support to those and thoughts for those who don't pray, to the folks that, were impacted and, just knowing valued, heard, and seen. And we're always going to be there together.
No, hey, and I think, man, I think that's a perfect way to close out things. Hey, my Spartan brother, I appreciate it for, again, just giving us some time. I know without a shadow of a doubt that the audience, they're going to get a lot out of this conversation, especially the athletes. And go pick up the book. I know just what we talked about today is just a snippet of the life lessons, the information that's in the book, Beyond the Gridiron. And I appreciate for kind of giving us some time today.
Hey, absolutely, man. It's been a pleasure, man. I appreciate you having me on, and I look forward to getting you back up here real soon.
Yeah, no, for sure. Hey, anytime I can come back and reminisce about the good old days, I'm up for it.
There was a lot of them too, man. A lot of them.
I hear that. Well, until next time, TEI family, we're signing off.